Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 17 that Fischer played versus Tal in the Candidates Tournament 1959. You're not going to want to miss this awesome attacking game in the Sicilian Najdorf. Before we jump into the analysis, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Really appreciate your support. Okay. Fischer with the white pieces plays e4, best by test, of course. c5, knight f3, d6, d4 opens Sicilian on the board, and after knight f6, knight c3, as I mentioned, we have a Najdorf in this game. And Fischer played his favorite variation, bishop c4, which would become known as the Fischer-Sozin attack. I just like to call it the Fischer attack, but Fischer had great results with this move. e6 by Tal to blunt the bishop. Fischer secures the bishop on b3 so he doesn't have a loose piece in his position. And Tal expands quickly on the queen side with b5. So his idea is simply to play b4, kick the knight, thereby undermining the defense of the e4 pawn. Fischer could play a3 here, preventing this plan, but he decides to play more actively and goes for pawn to f4. So this is a key idea in the Fischer-Sozin, is to play f4, f5, and really start to put a lot of pressure on this e6 point. So Tal just continues with his plan b4. The knight's driven to a4. Tal captures the pawn in e4 and Fischer castles. So Tal is up a pawn in this position, but Fischer definitely has full compensation. Let's take a look. Tal has played 1, 2, 3 pawn moves on the queen side and has moved his knight 2 times to win this pawn. Okay. Consequently, Tal is definitely lagging behind in development. Meanwhile, Fischer has developed 3 minor pieces and has his king castled. So in this position, Tal is quite concerned about Fischer playing f5 and opening up the position while his king's still stuck in the center and he is lagging behind in development. So that's why he decides to play g6 in this position to blockade the f5 square and try to prevent Fischer from playing this move. I will turn it over to you, though, in this position. Let me just remove the paint there. White to play in this position. Fischer's got compensation for the pawn, but of course, his compensation is dynamic in nature. Okay, if he doesn't play energetically, if he allows Tal to complete his development and secure his king, then he may just be down a solid pawn. So, over to you. What move did Fischer play in this position to start an initiative on the king side? So, if you have a key idea and it seems like your opponent is preventing it, okay, and in this position, Fischer's key idea is f5. With Tal's last move, g6, it looks like he's prevented this move. But the first question you should always ask yourself is, what happens if I just do it anyway? As Sam Shanklin says, turns out that f5, boom, is a great move in this position. So in the game, Tal played g takes f5. Okay, let's just take a look at, let's say e takes f5 in this position. Here, Fischer could just continue with development. Let's say bishop e3, bishop g7, bishop d5, hitting the rook in the corner. If the rook comes to a7, Fischer would have this knight takes f5 discovered attack on the rook, and Fischer would be doing very well, would be almost winning. So that's why Tal opted for g takes f5. Okay, just to try to keep this diagonal in the d5 square a little bit under control. But I will throw it back over to you. Again, energetic play is called for. We can't let Tal consolidate his position and consolidate his extra pawn. So how did Fischer add more wood to the fire? Pause your videos. Yeah, so far the opening battle is being waged over this f5 square. So congratulations if you found the awesome sacrifice. Knight takes f5. Boom. Great move. Of course, the tactical point being is that if Tal were to grab the pawn on f5, Fischer would have this nice move, queen d5. Okay, threatening mate, also threatening the rook in the corner. After bishop e6, defending. Queen takes a8. Fischer would regain his material with interest. So that's why Tal left the knight on f5 and opted for rook g8. But again, energetic play is required here. Okay, we can't just simply start retreating our pieces. Okay, so I'll throw it over to you again one last time here. Fischer found another brilliant move to keep his raging initiative going. Pause your videos. What did Fischer play here? So, as many players know today, there are loads of sacrifices in the Sicilian involving the d5 square. Okay? And that's well-established theory now, but we really have players like Fischer to thank for working out these ideas way back when. Bishop d5 was the move he played in the position, and congratulations if you found that move. Just an awesome move, okay? Exploiting the weakness of this point in the Sicilian, specifically when there's a pawn on e6, okay? So the natural move, of course, for black to play that we would need to calculate in this position is what happens if black accepts the sacrifice after queen takes d5. You can just see that all of black's stuff is hanging. Okay, I mean, it's the knight's on prise, the rook's on prise. After bishop takes f5, queen takes f5. Now Fischer's threatening mate. So Tal would be best advised playing rook a7, defending laterally, and then Fischer would simply capture on e4 with a winning position. So Tal declined that sacrifice as well and played rook a7. Okay, now it's time for Fischer to recoup some of the lost material. Well, some of the invested material, I should say. It hasn't been lost. Bishop takes e4. Okay, and after pawn takes, Tal's up a pawn, and in this position, Fischer plays bishop takes f5. Okay, and he criticized this move, and I have to agree with him. So let's give that one a question mark. It would have been much better, I think, for Fischer to keep attacking potential on the board. Okay, this is a good piece. Okay, we don't necessarily want to just trade it off for this undeveloped bishop on d7. So best would have been either bishop d5 or I think bishop f3 probably would have been the best move. Just keeping some more tension in the position, and white is doing quite well. After bishop f5, now we start to see some really imaginative defensive play by Tal. Now, of course, everybody knows that Tal was an amazing attacking player. Just unbelievable sacrifices and attacks throughout his entire career. But of course, you can't become the world chess champion without being able to defend. And I think this game really showcased Tal's defensive prowess because he found just a series of only moves to stay in the game. So this is the first one coming up. Rook e7. Very nice move by Tal, okay? He's able to do this nice rook lift to safeguard the open e-file, okay? Which, of course, Fischer is going to try to use to attack. So this gives some much-needed cover to Tal's king. Fischer captures on c8, and then we have Fischer's really his first mistake. Okay, but it's such an understandable one. He plays bishop to f4 in this position. Okay, what could be more logical? Developing the last minor piece, putting pressure on d6, just accentuating his lead in development. But Fischer missed that in this position, Tal could play queen c6. Okay, so Tal's got a double attack here, which is why Fischer played queen f3. Okay, Fischer didn't think the capture on a4 was possible because of bishop takes d6 and this double attack, but the key move that Fischer missed is that Tal could simply retreat the queen back to c6 and keep everything together. So, jumping back, instead of bishop f4, Fischer missed the chance of a win in the opening with the move pawn to c3. Tough move to find, but the idea is that now the knight on a4 is safeguarded, and it's designed specifically to combat this move queen c6, because now Fischer can just simply play rook f2, okay, and everything is nice and defended. Then Fischer can look to complete his development and look to attack this vulnerable king in the center of the board. So going back to the game continuation, we had queen c6, queen f3, Tal captured. Fischer took on d6, but Tal again found this nice defensive move, queen c6. Okay, this is an only move in the position. Fischer grabs on b8. Tal gives a check here, pushing Fischer's king in the corner, and then grabs the pawn on, the bishop on b8. Fischer notes during the game, he made the notation after this 21st move, queen takes b8, that there were a lot of spectators in the playing hall, many of whom were shouting and whistling after each move. He suspects that these weren't really chess fans, that some, local soccer match or something had been canceled, so they all decided to come over and check out the chess tournament. But I can imagine this noisy environment was very distracting and infuriating to Fischer, who throughout his whole career, and rightfully so, people give him a lot of flack for talking about noise and the lighting, but any of you who have played Sears over-the-board chess know that the conditions can really affect your game, okay? And I'm sure that this had some impact on Fischer. And it's undoubtedly why he noted it in the book. I think it was kind of a subtle hint that these distractions prevented him from converting the full point in this game. I'll leave that for you to decide. Queen c6, so Fischer activates the queen. Rook d7, rook ae1, so Fischer gets his last piece into the attack. And now Tal is finally able to develop this dark squared bishop e7 on move 23. Now, Fischer comes up with an enterprising move here, but unfortunately, it was flawed. He played rook takes f7, okay, trying to undermine the defense of the e6 square. And he thought in this position that after king takes f7, queen e6, that his opponent would be forced to play king g7. He thought this was an only move here. And after queen takes d7, Fischer would be completely winning. Okay, this bishop, let's say after rook e8, we have a series of exchanges here. Tal's king would be wide open. Fischer would have a 2-pawn advantage with a safer king. Some care would need to be taken that you don't walk into a perpetual, but this is definitely a winning position. But once again, Tal came up with a nice defensive move, an only move in the position, king f8. Okay, and this is what Fischer had missed. And after queen takes d7, regaining the sacrificed rook, Tal's able to start consolidating. Okay, so his king is still feeling pretty drafty right now, but look at how his pieces have been able to congregate around the king and provide its safety. Okay. Of course, in this position, Fischer can't accept exchange of queen, so he played queen b7. And he notes that the complexion of the game has changed entirely over the course of a few moves. Now it's really Fischer in this position who is fighting for a draw, believe it or not. But credit to Tal for just showing his defensive chops. It's not something that he's widely known for, but as I said, you cannot become world champion without being a really tenacious defender. Rook g6, and Fischer plays c3. Now, his idea with this move is basically damage control, right? I think he's resigned at this point that his winning chances are gone. And what he's trying to do is focus in on Tal's queenside pawns, the A and B pawn. He knows that if he can exchange off these pawns, that the resulting endgame would be a theoretical draw. And he's totally right. So over the next phase of the game, the battle really revolves around Fischer trying to break down Tal's queenside pawns and Tal trying to keep them alive, okay, just to keep winning chances on the board. So we have a5, queen c8, king g7, queen c4. Okay, Fischer reroutes his queen to try to start putting pressure on these queenside pawns as discussed. Bishop d8, and Fischer captures here. Okay, so one pawn gone. All that's really left for Fischer to do to secure the half point, to salvage the half point, is to trade off this B pawn. But here Fischer plays a mistake, at least in his estimation. Okay, it is, and this kind of just a little bit shows the age of the analysis. But again, Fischer's doing this on his own over the board. He does not have the benefit of a computer engine. He criticized the move g3, saying it was a mistake. It's actually the best move according to the engine. So make that of what you will. Queen c6. So great move by Tal, right? He's up the material in this position, so he looks to exchange off the queens. So Fischer at least does it on his own terms. If Tal's going to take the queen, at least his rook gets into an active position and is now putting pressure on this pawn on b4. Now, what Fischer expected in this line was for Tal to play bishop e7. Okay. And then Fischer would play pawn to a3, looking to exchange off this pawn. Now, Fischer always has to worry about the reply b3, trying to preserve the pawn. But here we can see after, let's say, rook c7, rook e6 defending, rook b7, Fischer gets behind the pawn and will capture it, and this game should end in a draw. But Fischer missed that Tal has this nice move, rook b6. And again, a3 can be met by b3, preserving the pawn. Okay, this is a decisive advantage for black, whereas this would just be a draw. Okay, it's all revolving around this b pawn. Fischer trying to destroy it, Tal trying to preserve it. King g2, both players start centralizing the kings. Logical play. Bishop g5. Okay. Tal's going to start using the bishop to try to restrict the king and just kind of inch his way into the position. King e2. Tal brings his king to the very nice d5 square, attacking the rook, and Fischer defends. Bishop f6. Now Fischer's got really concrete problems to solve with this pawn on b2. He played rook c2. This was the game continuation. He dismissed b3, which he says is probably at this point the best move because he didn't want to immobilize his pawn majority. Okay, now it's really difficult to exchange off this b pawn, and he just did not like the look of this position. That's why he opted for rook c2. But after bishop e5, rook e2, Fischer just waits. Rook f6, rook c2, rook f3. Okay, Tal's starting to break through and push the king back. King e2, rook f7, king d3, bishop d4. Now we see Tal's just slowly but surely inching his way into the position, okay, and depriving Fischer of squares for his pieces. So he went for a3 in this position. Understandable move. And of course, Tal plays pawn to b3, preserving the pawn, attacking the rook. Fischer here plays rook c8. Rook e2 is really to no avail because Tal could just simply come in, rook f3, and after king d2, bishop takes b2. So Fischer's forced to play rook c8 here, and now Tal has won another really important pawn, this pawn in b2. Now the path of his b pawn is clear for promotion. Rook d8, Fischer trying to deliver rear checks to the king. This is a nice drawing idea to be aware of in rook and pawn endings, but you know the problem here is that Tal has an extra piece, and this passed b pawn is just a monster. So he just calmly plays king c6. Fischer gets behind the pawn. Rook f3, king c4, rook c3, driving the king to b4, and then Tal simply puts the question to the rook. The rook's forced to come to b5, and Tal plays bishop a1 here. Nice move, just getting out of the way of this b pawn. So Fischer does all he can in this position, and that's to push his a pawn. I mean, what other counterplay does white really have? You know, you can't. This kingside pawn majority is going nowhere fast, and it's very hard to mobilize. So it's black to play in this position, and I'll turn it over to you. What should black play here? Pause your videos. Okay, once again, we have a position where we have a key idea, and it looks like our opponent is preventing it, right? We'd love to play b2 here, but the problem is the rook would be hanging. King takes e3. But we shouldn't stop there. We should always ask ourselves, what happens if I do it anyway? And that's exactly what Tal did in this position. b2 just works, okay? And congratulations if you spotted that. If white plays king takes c3, b1 equals queen, put this on the board, would come with a discovered check, and black would be completely winning. So that's why after b2, Fischer resigned in this position. Tough loss for Fischer. Just so you know, from an historical context, Tal went on to win the Candidates Tournament in 1959. This will be, by the way, the last game from this tournament that we'll review in my 60. So Tal went on to win the tournament. He then went on to face Botvinnik for the World Chess Championship in 1960, which he won. So he was on great form here. Of course, earlier in the game, Fischer just had a really, really strong position made possible by really enterprising sacrifices. f5, knight takes f5, and also bishop d5. Wow, great play. But in the critical position, he just missed this key move c3, okay, to combat black's only defensive try in the position, which is queen c6. Very hard to see that. So this would have been the winning line for Fischer. But c3 in this type of position, when you're looking for development and attacking moves, it's very hard to change your plan and think defensively and think prophylactically. But again, credit to Tal for his amazing defense in this game. Of course, he's always been credited for being an attacking genius, but he really showed that he could play defense just as well as Petrosian and the rest of them when he needed to. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, join Team MVP, and turn on your notifications. You're not going to want to miss the next installment in the series, game number 18. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.